This video starts at an odd angle with a demonstration of the device we're going to be taking a look at. This is a trick perpetual motion device, and the difference between the normal one and this is that the normal one has a black base or perhaps a wooden base, so you can't actually see what's inside it. In this case we can see what's inside it. It's kind of the reveal model. And it's interesting to note that it's not the same as one featured by another YouTuber where there was a motor spinning a magnet to launch this ball, to accelerate it. But as it is, it looks as though the ball goes down this spiral and then somehow manages to defy gravity to get back up to the top again. In reality, it's being boosted by an inductive sensor and what's best described as a railgun. It's a magnet that suddenly pulses it and launches it along the track into the top. You can put more than one ball into this, but it causes problems. If two go down at once, it can't recover the magnetic pulse because it's got a bank of capacitors used for that. And it fails to launch the other ones. They tend to swing backwards and forwards a bit like a Newton's cradle until it launches them out the unit and they roll all over the place. I've lost several balls already, so one is the best approach here. But anyway, let's take a look inside. So this thing came from AliExpress, and the video got off to a very, very bad start indeed, because when it arrived, it wouldn't even power on, and the instructions said, before you even use it, make sure it's fully charged. And I think part of the process of enabling it is to fully charge the 18650 lithium cell in here. And until then, it won't power up. Fine, I put it in charge. It took quite a while, and then it did power up. And to power it up, you've got a little touch sensor down here. The idea being that in the more concealed models, that you mysteriously just touch this part of the unit, and that's what activates it. The touch sensor is visible in this unit, as is everything else, including the big bank of capacitors. Quite exciting. But after that, here's what actually happened when I powered it. I've just pressed the touch sensor to turn it off, and this is what actually happened when I first powered it up in an on state. So here's the ball going down, and it just rocks backwards and forwards, doesn't go anywhere. And I ended up opening it, and I don't know if you can see this, right? I don't know if you can see this. Do you see a little red LED lighting there? Hold on, I shall turn the light off and you'll see the red LED just... Oh, it's very dim, isn't it? Hold on, I'll change the lighting. Now when this rolls backwards and forwards, you'll see a wee red flash. That's not normally visible except through the clear case. And the reason for that is because under there is a little industrial proximity detector. Okay, watch your eyes, the light is coming back. The light is back. Okay, while this is in a stopped state, let's take a look at this. So you can see, if I tilt it at this angle, and we zoom down a bit, oh, I've just let go of that ball. I've already lost a few of the balls, mainly because they ping out this thing at considerable force. If we take a look at this, we can see the industrial induction sensor here, that is normally used in factory machines to detect when a machine is a certain position and a metal fin goes in front of it. In this case, it's being used to detect the ball rolling in front of it. You can still see it's got a bit of charge. This is an interesting feature, that residual charge bit thing. It's got lots of capacitors. Did I mention the big capacitors that are kind of, you can kind of see them down there? They are used to pulse the coil. It's quite exciting, really. But when the proximity detector detects the ball, it then triggers the microcontroller to fire a MOSFET, and it pulses these capacitors. Oh, that's turned on. I shall turn it off again by touching that. When it's on, it's got a little blue LED there. When it's charging, it's got red. When it's charged, it's green. It's got 3 LEDs in close vicinity, and the little touch sensor. Here, you can see as I swipe it, that goes out. Bit finicky. But when I turned it on, it didn't work. And it turned out, see that red wire there? That is the problem here. I don't know if that's even in focus. Hold on. It is now. That red wire is what I added afterwards, because there was a break in a track, and it meant that the part of the circuitry that generates the 12 volts for this detector wasn't working. And I could tell it wasn't working because I could see there was an LED visible on it, and it wasn't lighting, and I opened it up, removed it, and I connected to the suitable supply, and it did light, so I knew that was the problem. Anyway, let's open this now and get the circuit board out of it, so I'll just pause while I do that. One moment, please. Okay, I've taken all the screws out of this perpetual Motlon toy. Slight spelling error there. Rated output 10 microamp to 3 amp. I'd guess 10 microamp is the standby current. It says worm tips. 1 minute without sensing the beads at work, the device will automatically power off. You want to turn on the machine, need to reboot. That just means touch the button again to turn it on. Okay, now I've got the screws out. Note the USB charging port hidden on the bottom. It's very clever, very neat. Whose design is this that was clearly stolen, is the question. Now, a good thing to do if you take it apart is to remove, this is the 18650 lithium cell. It's a good idea to unplug that, but note when you unplug it that the whole connector, is the housing and everything just comes off. So before you do it, make a note of the positive and mark it on the circuit board. Okay, now I've diffused it by disconnecting the lithium cell. We can look at the other components. So the circuit board is just kind of sat in. Is it going to come out? Is it going to come out easily? Let's poke a screwdriver under it and lever it gently. Yes, it's coming out. Noting the 3 fat capacitors rated 10,000 microfarads at 35 volts each, they are all in parallel. Well, they are now. They weren't before. Note the little inductor. That's a boost circuit that boosts the voltage up in these. They probably hold quite a charge at the moment. Nope, they're not holding a charge. That's good. But that would normally make quite a spark. And the voltage they charge up to can be adjusted by this little potentiometer, which also sets the force at which the ball will be pinged up. And it goes from not quite making it up to actually firing up such force it makes a loud clack and spins forcibly in the thing. Right, tell you what, let's get these other connectors off. Noting that these other connectors also just come off completely with their housing, which isn't great. And this one going to do it? Yes, this one does it as well. It's not great. But the actual industrial sensor is the inductive sensor, is soldered directly onto the circuit board. Right, tell you what, let's take other bits out of here. Is this cell glued in? What's the capacity of the cell? The cell is glued in. It's got a sticky pad in the bottom of it. That's a bit annoying, but not to worry. Right, tell you what, I shall take these screws out. Is this screwdriver going to fit? Yes. This is a monster of a coil. It's got this big metal keeper plate, presumably to amplify the strength, or is that perhaps coupling to the inductive sensor? I doubt it. And there's a big fat coil here on this slug of metal. That is monstrous. Is this in focus? I'm just checking it's in focus. I think it's in focus. That's a beast. Yes, very impressive. And then we've got the little industrial factory inductive sensor. Let's get that out. Let's get it all out. Doesn't seem like it's actually in with much. Okay, there it is. Just a classic little industrial sensor. And we've got the circuit board out. Well, you know what happens now? Oh, incidentally, because this is super ultra top secret, all the numbers have been scrubbed off everything. Literally, the transistors have the numbers scrubbed off, the microcontrollers, the numbers scrubbed off, the battery charge, TP4056, is the numbers scrubbed off, that little 5-volt regulator has the numbers scrubbed off, these MOSFETs with the DW01, which doesn't have the numbers scrubbed off, but that's the protection MOSFETs for the cell, and this little 12-volt regulator has the number rubbed off it. But I know what they all are, so it doesn't matter. Right, tell you what, I'll take a picture of the circuit board and we can explore it. One moment, please. Reverse engineering is complete. Let's explore by taking a look at both sides of this little circuit board. Quite interesting. So on the back of the circuit board, we have an inductor, which is used to boost voltage. And then we've got 3 large capacitors, 10,000 microfarad, 35 volt, all in parallel, giving 30,000 microfarads, which is quite an impressive value. But that's needed to give the coil the massive bump of current to fire the ball up the ramp. So we have the USB charge port. It is USB-C. It doesn't have the two resistors that would allow it to charge from a smart charger, so it's just going to have to use a standard USB-A to USB-C connector without any sort of smart stuff going on there. And that charges the lithium cell via a standard charge control chip. The lithium cell has protection, a DW01A and a huge bank of 82058 dual MOSFETs in parallel to allow it to operate. Well, it operates at high current, so I'm guessing that because there's quite a high demand in current, they've just chosen a large cluster of these MOSFETs in parallel, because the DW01A chip tends to measure the voltage drop across the MOSFETs to determine an overload condition. We have a little boost circuit with a potentiometer here, a little trimmer that we can use to adjust the voltage, and the voltage range goes from about, say, 13 volts up to over 20 volts, and that is used to charge these capacitors, the three big capacitors, and that voltage is set to give the correct level of kick. Too weak and the ball won't make it up the ramp. Too strong and it will go up with a loud clack and spin for ages in the container at the top. So that's used for fine tuning that. This diode here is paired with this inductor and this chip for boosting that voltage. This is the MOSFET that fires the coil, and the coil has a protection diode across it and a little snubber network. And there's a microcontroller controlling it all, including turning the power on to the negative rail for the whole of the boost circuit, and also quite a complex little level shifter for driving this MOSFET, and also a 12-volt voltage regulator just purely for the inductive sensor that detects the balls. Okay, let's take a look at the schematic. Here it is, and the schematic is a 2-pager. It's quite complex. So here's the incoming USB supply. It has a potential divider, two 10K resistors to provide a voltage signal to the microcontroller. So the microcontroller, see these orange dots here? They indicate that these are either a signal to the microcontroller in this case, or signals from the microcontroller to control the rest of the circuitry, the power supply circuitry. The charge control chip, with its number rubbed off, is a CL4056A. It's classic setup. It's got two LEDs. I should have coloured these in. I feel the need to colour the LEDs. One moment, please. The colour has been added. So the charge indication chips, red indicates that the lithium cell is charging and green indicates it's charged. There is no status of charge given to the microcontroller. All it knows is that it's plugged into the charger, and I guess it can monitor the voltage because it is powered directly by the output from the lithium cell. So the current that it charges at is set by this resistor, 1.2 thousand ohms, and that sets roughly about 1 amp charge current. Here's the lithium cell, and here, very abbreviated, is the protection circuitry, DW01A, and the 58205A MOSFET packages. You can look up the DW01A if you wish. It's got a good data sheet that shows you everything you need to know about how that all works. After that, so that line goes out. I've marked it as 3.6 volt as the mid voltage. This is one of the rails going out. In reality, it will be anywhere between 3 and 4.2 volts. I'm not sure at which point the microcontroller decides that it needs charged and might actually turn off. We have a voltage booster. Now, it's worth mentioning that the 0 volt rail of the other supply rails here is switched. It can be turned off completely. So there's a MOSFET here, and it's controlled by the microcontroller, and I would guess this is just to save passive standby current. But when the microcontroller is woken up by the touch sensor being touched, it turns a power rail on, and it also, and this almost seems excessive, it sends an enable signal over to the voltage boost circuit. It also had its number rubbed off. It's got the same pinout as a Texas Instruments TLV61048, but that only goes up to about 14 volts. This goes up much higher, so it's probably a drop-in clone of that chip using just a standard pinout. The enable signal for that also lights a blue LED just to show that it is active. That's not necessarily normally visible on the black or wood type cases of these, where they're hiding all the electronics inside. This boosts the voltage up based on the setting of that potentiometer. It goes via the Schottky diode, basically speaking the inductor here, and that's a guesstimation based on the data sheet for that chip. It pulls it to the 0 volt rail to put a magnetic charge into it, then lets it collapse, and the higher voltage collapsing spike goes through this Schottky diode and charges up the cluster of capacitors. This one here represents the three 10,000 megafarad capacitors. Once the voltage in that rail reaches the level that you've selected in this little potentiometer here, the feedback signal turns this off, so it just basically caps at that voltage. The 20 volts, because that's what I measured it as for a good result, also feeds this little chip, which is its number rubbed off, which is most like a 78L12, and that puts out a 12 volt supply purely for the inductive sensor, the bit that detects the ball passing over it. So we get 3.6 volts, 20 volts, 12 volts, the switch 0 volt, and the 0 volt. Okay, let's take a look at the next page. It's actually simpler. The power supply is the bulk of the circuitry. So here is the plus 3.6 volts that could be from 3 to 4.2 volts powering the microcontroller, but it does so via a little bit of a filter, 4.7 ohm, and a little capacitor just to make sure this is a decoupled supply. The touch sensor just goes across the battery, and it's got its own sort of filtering circuitry on its own circuit board and a little buffer transistor, and it just basically pulls the input to the microcontroller down low to tell that it's been touched. It has one input and two outputs, the microcontroller here, that are come from the power section. The USB monitoring tell when it's plugged into the USB charger. I just noticed a little missing dot. There is a dot there, but it's not big enough. There. Oh, let's put one there as well. Let's just double check. I've put all the dots in. I think I've put all the dots in. Yes, all the dots. But it monitors so it knows when it's plugged into USB supply. The two outputs are to enable the power switch, this 0 volt switched, which basically just bridges then onto the 0 volt, and enable, which enables a little boost circuit. The 12 volt supply does two things. It goes to the inductive sensor, which is a pull-up resistor, and it goes to the 0 volt switched. And when the inductive sensor detects a ball rolling across it, it sends a signal to the microcontroller. That 12 volts is also used to drive the gate of this MOSFET here, which is another AP100N03D that switches the coil. But the process for switching that MOSFET is quite complex. The microcontroller sends a signal out to a standard NPN transistor switch, switches to the 0 volt rail. That then turns on a P-channel MOSFET, which switches to the positive rail. That positive rail then switches this MOSFET on, and that then drives the kicker coil. There is a bit of filtering here on the input of that, presumed to prevent rogue tripping. And also there's a diode across the kicker coil to protect it against the MOSFET, against the back EMF spike you get off that when it's turned off. And also, as an extra thing across the MOSFET is a little snubber network, but it's got a very high value 10K resistor. Seems too high, and a little capacitor, but it's just designed to quench any sort of transients that might potentially risk damaging that MOSFET. And that is more or less it. It's an interesting circuit. Very interesting. It works. It just seems a bit overcomplicated. It makes me wonder, when they saw the other one, can I brighten this image a little bit? Not much. When they saw the other copy of it that just had a spinning motor with a magnet on it that flicked the ball and made it go up, they must have been a bit miffed. But anyway, it's a complex circuit. It works. The whole case, everything about it is very well designed. It's well engineered. It's just a very professional looking product. It does make me wonder who originally came up with it and who copied it. Which is the copy? Is this a copy? I think this is a copy. But interesting stuff. The perpetual motion ball kicker, that as it comes down the spiral, it just gives it that boost to lift it up and seems to defy gravity in the process. It's Actually quite a complex but very interesting little circuit.